Ooh, happy Monday, everybody. How are you? I'm glad you're here with me live today. And for everybody on replay, welcome. Please let me know how you're doing and comment below. Love to hear from you. Today is something that I think a lot of people are thinking about as they look at this field. And I really believe that feeling like an imposter, like a fake or a fraud, is commonplace as we seek to go after the job. And I heard an interesting snippet of an interview by Michelle Obama, and she's out promoting her book. And she was in England, and she said there's not a day that goes by that, even though she's been a lawyer, she went through 7 years of school to achieve that. She was a first lady for 8 years, and has written a book about becoming who she is in her life. She still says there's not a day that goes by that I question, like, why would anybody want to show up and listen to me talk about a book I've written? Why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? And that same feeling, the imposter syndrome, can be something that we feel as we're going into the legal field, because we figure, well, Leslie's saying I don't need school, but wouldn't school make me feel less like a fake? Not necessarily, not when you know this career like I do. And the most important thing you can do is understand whether or not you have those foundation skills, when I say that, I mean rock solid office skills. And you have to have Microsoft Word, and you have to type very quickly. And my book goes into all of that, legal break-in. But I always say, like, the speed should be in the neighborhood of 60 words per minute and up. But most law firms, to be honest, I think I took a typing test at one law firm. I think that was it. And I'd worked for many law firms, so it's not that I stayed in one law firm for 30 years. So make sure you have that. And then take my course when it launches at the end of May. And get that edge so that it builds your confidence. The first thing is to make sure, well, is this career for me or not? Do I like it? Is there a flame that is, of interest? Michelle Obama said that her parents were supportive. They saw a flame in her and they fanned it, like to increase her exploration, of seeking out what she should be doing. And I ask you to do that too. What is it that you really want to do? Is it this career? I don't ever want to talk somebody out of it, but is it for you? And why? Know your why as to why you want to get into this. Okay, so if it's like you have an interest in working with a lot of clients and you don't mind answering phones and you don't mind typing up dictation for the attorney, you're saying, Leslie, that sounds an awful lot like a secretarial job. Well, a lot of what we do is clerical. So understand the career first. And then if you're still interested, and then go for it. But prepare yourself well enough so that you have that edge and you feel like, well, I'm nervous about starting on that first day. You've landed a job and now you're nervous as heck, but you're just going to go for it. And nobody starts completely ready. And most people do it afraid. Most of us go on interviews afraid, start first days afraid. Look, I'm nervous starting in a new law firm when I've had 20-something years experience. And it's not the nerves of when I was new. And I didn't know this career was for me. I just went into it and figured that out if it was or not. So I didn't need to have all the answers before I dove in. Now, what I heard growing up was, don't get your hopes up. Well, I'm telling you, get your hopes up. If this is for you, you better darn well get your hopes up. Don't listen to people that say that stuff. That comes from, in my case, My mom, her first marriage was not good, and it didn't last long. That was with my biological father. And he came back from Korea and was suffering from PTSD and was violent. Okay? And so she ended that, and he was not in my life, and she married somebody else. And so my mother was always like preparing herself for the worst. And that's how she brought me up. But I learned over many years not to prepare myself for the worst all the time, that good things can happen. And that if I live in that state of negativity all the time, it's not good for my mind, for my health, for anybody around me. But a lot of it comes from how we were brought up. We can ditch that because listen, this is what God says about that. In Matthew 19:26, he says, with God, all things are possible. Now, that's when it's according to his purpose, his will for you, okay? And it says, the world urges you, this is a different verse, the world urges you to hate your enemies and seek revenge. Jesus tells you to love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. That's Matthew 5:44. That's a tough order. That's a tough order, isn't it? And James 2:26 says, faith without works is dead. So he's got a plan and a purpose for you. If you believe that God can do all through you, that with God all things are possible, then you should be moving forward. And you should be jumping, sometimes without a parachute. And I think one of the best things was that there was nothing available for me, not even books to look at when I went into this field. I just went into it honestly. I didn't even know what a paralegal was. I went into it working in an administrative position in a law firm, doing everything. And then I met my mentor paralegal, and I started to see what this was all about. And so my responsibility towards you is to give you hope and to say, if you have those foundation skills and you've worked in an office, or you can go work in an office and then make the jump into the legal field, I would say get the insider view in my book, Legal Break-In, on Amazon. $5.99 it costs to download it right away on Kindle. And it's available in paperback. But don't start thinking something's for you until you start doing an investigation, and let God show you whether this is for you or not. Now, I have to tell you, I jumped into this without knowing that. I jumped into it thinking it's just, it's a clerical job, and that's what I would be doing. And sometimes it was heavily that, and other times I did research and that type of thing. So it was everything you can imagine and more. That has to do with running an office, and some things I never thought I'd be doing, like running to buy snacks or office supplies, but that was my role in my first job. So I'm here to be real with you about what this job is. I'm here to tell you that the protocol to entering this job is not in this box of you must go to school, you must get certified through NALA or some other organization, you must have those foundation skills, and then you go into an entry-level job and you learn. And the reason I put up the course that I did is to give you more legal knowledge to add to your resume and cover letter. What Michelle Obama talked about in this interview I watched was she was going to meet with the Queen, and they said there were all these rules and regulations, just like people tell you about the paralegal field, right? You must go to school. Well, they said all these rules and regulations are in place when you meet the Queen, and curtsying, and where you sit and how you walk in, and so they're telling her this, the powers that be in England. And so when she gets there, the Queen says, just go in. And Michelle said, I thought we had to do XYZ. And the Queen said, ah, that's rubbish. And I'm here to tell you the same, that there's more than one way to enter this field. And yeah, Melissa, they're out there, because I have people there, I'll have people come on here and say that to me, but it's all in how you search, and that's the way it is. I've had people tell me that there were no entry level jobs that required zero experience in Los Angeles, and I know better. I had someone tell me that regarding New York City, but I'm from that area. I know better. And I know LA, because when I started teaching online, putting my class out there a year and a half ago, I had a student from LA who said that to me. And so I went on while we were live, and I was doing a live on my phone, and I went on live on my laptop, and I absolutely found, jobs that needed no experience. It's all in how you search. So, well, I teach that in my class, Melissa. If you live in rural Illinois, then you have an issue. I lived in rural Oklahoma, and the nearest big city to me was Tulsa, which was, I lived outside of Claremore, Oklahoma, which is it's a 15,000 population city. And I lived in a district that wasn't even incorporated in the country. So I know rural. I had cows, pigs, chickens, all that. And so driving into Tulsa was the option for me of 40 miles one way. And so that's where I found my job, And then when I moved to Florida, I lived at that time in Tallahassee, but honestly, that's not they had jobs, of course, but that's not the most, the jobs that are truly available in Florida are in Orlando and Miami. But in Miami, you really have to, for the most part, be bilingual. In Orlando, not so much, but there are jobs that are plentiful in Orlando. So I had a student that was in upstate New York, which I know well, and was in a tiny town, very tiny town outside of Albany. But when I say outside, I mean 2 hours away. So then there's a decision to make. If the jobs are not there, then, you've got to make a decision where you're either going to drive, and 2 hours one way is not an option. That means that she would have to move. And that's easier said than done if you're a mom, and, whether you're married or not, if you have family around, and I know how hard that is. So those are the things that play into this. It's not that there should be, 50 jobs available in rural Illinois. I lived outside of Chicago for 4 years in Arlington Heights. So were there a lot of jobs in Arlington Heights? No. But in Chicago, or right outside of Chicago, yes, scads. So I was 25 miles northwest of Chicago, but I was a stay-at-home mom then. So what I'm saying is, the options are, I can't help it if I had 2 children. I was a stay-at-home mom at that point. My kids, when I broke into the legal field, were 13 and 15. But I was running a business when they were younger. When they were 7 and 9, I was running my own business, where I was driving a lot. My business was in town, and I was doing this driving. I had to make a decision that my husband would make sure that my 2 daughters were okay while I was working 40 miles away. So, or if you're a single mom like I used to be, that there's somebody that can pinch hit until you get home and do that kind of thing. It's just not easy, right? So no, if you live, you've got to work around all that stuff if possible. And that's something that we individually have to do. And I teach in my class like what job search place I use and all that to be, to get to find those jobs that, well, that is something that I know very well, but I don't teach it. Okay. And it's not, those opportunities are not there for a lot of paralegals. Attorneys are very uncomfortable yet with doing that. They worry that people aren't working. They really have a paranoia about it. And I did it for like about 3 or 4 months with an attorney when I moved away from Tallahassee, and loved the type of work I did. But that's, attorneys get paranoid that you're not sitting there and actually working in your office, so other people that are in business, I think, get that more than attorneys do, that they get that that's a viable thing to do, as long as what attorneys deal with are insurance companies, and whether their malpractice insurance company will allow it. They deal with that stuff. That's why you don't see a ton of internships with law firms for new people, because the malpractice insurance company won't cover it. So my question is, do you believe that you can, for people on here listening to the topic, do you believe that you can overcome these barriers? God says with all things, that with God all things are possible. Yeah, Melissa, that's what I found out. And so I truly believe that when I see barriers in front of me, there are times when I feel defeated by the barrier. But what I have to remember is that I've overcome, and so have you, so many barriers already. And if you believe what that verse says, and I don't know if you do or not, but if I really believe it, that with God all things are possible, then, and he has a plan and a purpose for my life. In Jeremiah 29:11, it says, he has a plan and a purpose for me. And read the verses around that. Very interesting. That the most important thing you can do, and this video is really directed at people looking at the career for the first time, then make sure that this is something you're interested in, truly. And then go for it. Go for it. And don't let anybody, anything stop you. There's hope. But if you lose hope, then all hope is lost. And you are the one that has to keep that fire burning and ask God to show you what plan and what purpose do you have for me. Sometimes you have to put your foot in the water to find that out. You've got to go, you're finding out, you want to find out the temperature of the water before you put your foot in it. And that does not work, does it? So you've got to sometimes dive in and find out if this is the place for you. And I found out for me that it was. So don't listen to that there's only one way to get in, and that's through 2 years of school and all that. That's what I say is what the Queen said about protocol, and everything has to be like this. She calls it rubbish, and I call it rubbish too. I'm saying that there's more than one way. That would really restrict it to only people who could afford school or want to go into debt, right? And that is not how it is. It became a lucrative moneymaker, didn't it? So now it's time to understand what reality is, and that the limitations are really only what you put on yourself, that there are workarounds for almost everything. It's not that we can work around everything. I worked around my children's schedule, and then before you know it, one was heading off to college and the other one was 2 years or 3 years later. And then then the three of us moved to Florida to be together with our oldest daughter. And so things change, and you would think that it should be easy to get into the field with experience, but what I felt was I had to prove myself all over again because I moved to a new state. But there were ways, I found easier ways to prove myself to the attorneys in my cover letter. Yeah, yeah. Killer cover letter. So think about taking the class in May, and you can go to my website and check it out, and I'll put the link below when I'm done with this video. But that's a ways off yet. And so in the meantime, go do your research. Go find out, go investigate areas of law that you're interested in. Never thought about it? Now's the time to think about it, okay? And keep the hope, keep the faith alive. Don't let the naysayers and the dream killers take it all, strip it all away from you. And don't let people from your past or things that happened in the past strip it away from you. That, oh, you shouldn't get your hopes up. That's ridiculous. My husband was raised completely the opposite. Completely the opposite. And you could see that he grew into a person who had hope and had a light in his life, that he could go after things and expect to, and I don't mean material things, but find life interesting and exciting and be an adventurer, you know, instead of being fearful. Yes, I know fear is real, but do it afraid. Take all those excuses away from you and do it afraid. All right, so have a great day. Thanks for your questions, Melissa. Thanks for being here, everybody. And let me know what you think in the comments below, what you're dealing with, if you feel like talking about it, and you know, whatever. And I'm glad you're here with me. So have a great one. I will see you in tomorrow's video, okay? Bye.